Hi, I'm Julian at the Fight Site, and today we're going to do a quick video about Marvin Vettori and how his aggression has boosted him to the top of the rankings in the middleweight division. So this Saturday, April 10th, 2021, Marvin Vettori is going to fight Kevin Holland. Marvin Vettori has been kind of a strange fighter in recent years, in that he hasn't really had a big name fight, and he's somehow made his way to the top 5 rankings. His most recent loss has been to Israel Adesanya, which isn't really much of a surprise given how Vettori isn't much of a striker compared to Israel Adesanya. But what's actually really interesting is how Vettori has been able to move up the rankings with a very minimalist style. To put it simply, Marvin Vettori is very left-hand heavy. He's also a very strong Cordero fighter, which means that he always likes to come forward, he's very aggressive, and he likes to throw in volume. The basic strategy for Marvin Vettori, because he's a southpaw, is to come forward and tie up the lead hand. After that, he can start trying to bang the head or to the body. This isn't necessarily bad or necessarily good, in that Marvin Vettori's shot selection can be kind of simple and that it's kind of predictable to understand where he's going to be punching and what's his power hand going to be. But Vettori doesn't really change much of his tempo, so he'll just throw relatively the same strikes over and over again. But what makes him so interesting and actually pretty good for the middleweight division is that he'll come in through these little bursts of power. He'll kind of burst in and out throwing 3 or 4 punches and then kind of stay in the pocket with his opponent. What this does is that it forces his opponent to constantly move backwards or engage him in a firefight. And because Vettori is built very strong, he can stand in the pocket and he has a pretty good chin that allows him to take most punishment and dish it back. Basically, if you're going shot for shot with Marvin Vettori, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to get outstruck and outvolumed. In terms of his kicking arsenal, Vettori has a pretty good left kick, which isn't a really big surprise given that he's a Cordero fighter. The issue is that Marvin Vettori is very heavy on his lead leg. This has led him to get out low kicked by Israel Adesanya, Cesar Ferreira, or Jack Hermansson. Those fighters have constantly gone after his legs and they found relative success with it. Vettori isn't necessarily the best at checking, even though he's made a pretty good effort in recent fights, but because his style is naturally aggressive and he likes to put a lot of weight on his lead leg, he's naturally not going to be as good as checking low kicks. This isn't a big indictment of him as a fighter, but something to look at later on. When rewatching his fight with Israel Adesanya, Vettori actually came a lot closer to beating Israel than a lot of people thought. But his main issue when he fought Israel Adesanya was that he fell for the feints and he was very easy to coerce into backing up against the fence. Basically, in order for Vettori to win, he needed to come forward and force Israel Adesanya to make exchanges with him. The problem was that Israel understood that Vettori needed to come forward and needed to make it a brawl. So what Adesanya did was hang out at range, throw tons and tons of feints, and force Vettori to constantly think about his next engagement. And Vettori's bad habit of constantly throwing his head back when trying to defend himself really put him into a lot of trouble. This is a big problem for Vettori, given how he likes to make exchanges in boxing range. When he comes forward, Vettori looks really good, but when his opponents throw back at him, he often throws his head back with his chin straight up in the air. Now, do I think that Vettori is going to have this kind of issue against Kevin Holland? I don't really think so. What I think is an issue is Marvin Vettori's issue with body kicks. Kicking to the body and to the legs has always been an issue for Vettori. He kind of likes to stand out in mid kickboxing range, which can be a really big issue if his opponent knows what they're doing. Holland might be kind of a meme fighter, and he might also just not be very good, but what Holland does understand is that he can seriously annoy his opponents with long kicks and long punches. While I'm not too sure how Vettori is going to turn out, I'm pretty sure he should have a pretty good understanding that getting into range will help him win the fight. And what Vettori did so well against Hermansson, his most recent opponent, is that Vettori kept coming forward, checking Hermansson's hands, and fighting in combination. Vettori no longer backed straight up as he did compared to Adesanya, and instead he would take a half step back and wait to throw counters. This is a big step up for a fighter who primarily used his feet to back straight up to avoid punishment. If Vettori is able to draw out Holland's bigger, wider strikes, he might be able to counter with some nice combinations. Or Vettori has proven that he has a pretty good wrestling base, and he might just take Holland down and hold him down on the ground. Derek Brunson proved that Holland isn't really a good defensive wrestler, and I think Vettori has the right tools to take him down and really punish him there. So do I think this is a good fight for Marvin Vettori? I don't particularly think so, in that I think that Holland isn't a really big skill test for Vettori. However, Holland is actually a pretty big name now in MMA, and I think a big name win for Vettori might actually solidify his chances of getting a title shot. After all, Whittaker will be fighting Gastelum, and if Vettori actually gets past Holland, I can see that being a very good matchup for the young contender. This has been a quick video breakdown on Marvin Vettori. If you like this content, please like, comment, or subscribe. If you want further exclusive content, you can subscribe to our Patreon. Starting at $3, you can get access to all of our exclusive content, such as commentary tracks, extra podcast episodes, and unique video essays.